హరప్పా మోహెంజదారో ఆది మహాభారతం నగరవీన గానం నాగరికత సారం ఆది మహాభారతం.
Namaste to everyone. A very grand welcome to this weekend's Mahabharat. Yes, now we entered into the 7th weekend of our Mahabharat initiative. And as you all know that this class is Indian history class number 6. So we already completed 5 classes of Indian history. The first class we discussed about the universe and its origin. And in the second class, we discussed about how did life come into existence. And in the third class, we discussed that how first, modern man was evolved. How modern man was evolved. This is what we discussed in our third class. And in the fourth class, we discussed about how this modern man who evolved actually has migrated out of Africa, and how he could reach first India. This is what we discussed there in the modern man evolution. After that, in the fourth class, if you see, we discussed about once the Homo sapiens species landed on this Indian landmass. For the first time, we started prehistory of India. That in the fourth class, we started with the prehistory of India. And in that we discussed from 60,000 years ago from now to around Mesolithic era, that is 10,000 years ago. 60,000 years ago to 10,000 years ago. So that period, the Paleolithic and the Mesolithic, we discussed in our fourth class of Indian history. And then in the last class, so as this is 6th class, just have a small recap of what we discussed in the 5th class, that is the last weekend. See, in the last weekend we discussed, in the starting we discussed how the Mesolithic global climate, the warm age, the changes from ice age to warm age, how the Paleolithic man was converting himself, was evolving himself out from being Stone Age man to Neolithic man. So we started with that, what were the main environmental conditions which led the human species to transform from Stone Age man to Neolithic man. After that we started studying about the Neolithic period, that is from 8000 BC to approximately around 4000 BC. So this 4000 years we studied in the Neolithic period. If you see, for the first time we discussed in the last weekend that agriculture was developed. Yes, so from Stone Age the person was only hunter, the human being was hunter, he was a food gatherer. He was in the Mesolithic period, he was a food collector. But in the Neolithic period we discussed that for the first time human beings started producing food, production of food, and that is the earliest form of agriculture. So that was the important mark point of Neolithic period. And in the Neolithic period, that is from 8000 to 4000 BC, we also discussed that because as a consequence of the starting of agriculture, the pottery skill was started. Pottery, making of pots, because to store the food grains which they gained from agriculture, they have to store that. So as a consequence of agriculture, we started, we discussed that in the Neolithic period, pottery was started. Pottery. So man was making pots. In the initial days, he was just making pots with just rough clay. There was no particular shape, there was no particular designs, etc. And in the last class we discussed that because of the agriculture and because of this pottery and all these skills which were developing, agriculture demands huge human labor. We discussed, right? So the moment human hands were in need, human beings started collecting, started getting together and started living together. So in the Neolithic period, if you see, we discussed in the last weekend that for the first time the earliest form of village communities started. Yes or no? Village communities have started. All these are the consequence of agriculture. Now, the moment we discussed in the last weekend, that the moment village communities came up, the moment human beings, sapiens were living together, it is very natural to expect social conflicts to erupt. So, if two people are meeting and living together, normally conflicts will come. So, to prevent these social conflicts, as a consequence of this social togetherness, we discussed that in the Neolithic period, a very earliest form of rules, social rules came up. And these conventions like the most aged and experienced person being considered as the leader of the group, leader of that particular settlement. And we also discussed at the end of our discussion in the last weekend, might be this was the period which was to be associated with the epic, the oldest epic of our India, that is Ramayana. So during this Neolithic period from 8000 to 4000 BC, very specifically to say around 5000 BC, just after agriculture was started, just after cotton production was started by 5000 years ago from now. So by in between that period, maybe because that was the period where there was no social rules, firm social rules, there were no social institutions, because that was just a very starting of the village communities. So we associate Ramayana to that period because the character of Lord Rama actually tells us that rule bounded character is actually the highest virtue. Lord Rama, the character, says that whatever the rules that we have put ourselves in the society, we have to follow them. We should not escape from them. That's what the character of Lord Rama says, because just upon the word of the father of Lord Rama, Dasharatha, he went out to, he left Ayodhya and he went out according to the epic. That means we can imagine that maybe this was the period where Lord Rama, like people, were trying to establish a strong institutional, social rules, a very earliest forms of social rules, and they stood as an example to the people to tell that following the social rules is a highest virtue. So these are some evidence, and even we have archaeological evidence, etc. Some very half-hearted evidence we have to tell that Ramayana epic was actually associated with this end of the Neolithic period. And in the last weekend we concluded that discussion with, in this scenario where small village communities are coming up, where agriculture was started flourishing slowly, just flourishing, extending its wings, and when animals were being reared, and when pottery was started, during this scenario where social togetherness was on its starting period, for the first time by around 2700 BC, that means after the Neolithic period, we come to Chalcolithic period we discussed in our 4th class. See, after 8000 BC, from 8000 to 4000 BC, once the Neolithic period was completed, we saw for the first time the discovery of metal. What is that metal? It was copper. How did they discover copper? As I have explained in the last weekend, that in the Neolithic period, because the social rules were on rise, emotional bondages were established between the humans. So the moment a human being was died, all the remaining maybe the family members, maybe the other cohabitants might have felt their vacuum, their presence. They might have felt their absence. So to pay respect to their to their respect to the personalities who were expired, this Neolithic period people started burying, as I have said, the earliest form of burying. So the moment this burying was going on, as I have said, maybe accidentally they might find, while they were excavating the soil, they might have found some colored rocks, and they were surprised by seeing them, and they took them out, because they might have thought that colored rocks were actually the blessings of the expired person. Maybe they might have already, started begun. There might have started the belief system of life after death, because that was the earliest form of emotional attachment. So people started feeling that maybe after person's death, life was still there. So in respect to that life after death, that belief, they might have taken out those colored substances as a blessing of the expired person. And maybe that colored rocks which they kept out in their homes as a representation of that expired persons, maybe accidentally they might have fallen into fire. And the moment a metal falls into the fire, you can see the metal molten, all the impure substances will go off, and the pure metal will melt, and upon cooling that metal will become strong. Yes or no? So maybe for the first time, this human being, at the end of the Neolithic period, the man discovered the metal. That is, the first metal to be discovered by the human being is copper. Yes or no? Copper. We discussed all these things, but I am just recapitulating. So that period from 4000 BC, after Neolithic period, from 4000 BC to around 3000 BC, this 1000 years of period, we call it as Chalcolithic period. Why Chalcolithic? Because first thing is the discovery of metal happened, that is copper. Chaco means copper. Now lithic in the sense stone. It is called as Chalcolithic period. That means even though metal was discovered in this period at 4000 BC, that doesn't mean people have completely left over their previous tools. Yes or no? Because this discovery of metal might not have occurred at all places at once. It has occurred at one place, but this discovery this art of making metal, manufacturing metal, has to first spread to all places. So we can consider this Chalcolithic period as a transition period from Stone Age to Metal Age. So Metal Age, to specifically to say, starts after Stone Age, that is 4000 BC. So this Copper Age, lasts for 1000 years till 3000 BC. So that means copper tools were on rise. People were started using copper for different, making of tools, for making of vessels, for making of utensils, maybe for making of even to hunting, to hunt, to gather the food, to dig the ground. They were making many utensils, many tools out of this copper metal. So this was happening from 4000 BC to around 3000 BC. And as we have discussed in the last class, by 2700 BC, it's a very important point. By 2700 BC, the village communities which started emerging in the Neolithic period now matured enough. Agriculture was, they were producing surplus grains. These villages now became too matured. Social rules were also on the rise, and agriculture, very very specifically agriculture, the production of the grains maybe was in surplus. Now listen, by 2700 BC, in this scenario of flourishing of agriculture, maturation of matured village communities, matured social, not matured, but earliest form of social rules coming up. So in this scenario, in our India and all over the world also, we have seen the emergence of the first earliest civilizations. Yes or no? Civilizations. As I have said, the Indus Valley civilization was for the first time came up on the world stage. Indus Valley civilization by 2700 BC. So here starts our lecture. So in this weekend, in this 7th weekend of our Mahabharat series, and in this 6th class of Indian history class, the topic for today's discussion is Indus Valley civilization. So normally this concept is very important. This period from 2700 BC to around 600 BC. to around 600 BC. Actually, this was the last phase of the prehistory. In that, from 2700 BC to 1900 BC, or let's say 1800 BC. I'm again repeating, from 2700 BC to 1900 BC. This was the period of Indus Valley civilization. After that, Vedic period will come. So by Vedic period, the prehistory will end. After that, our history starts. So we will discuss these in the coming lectures. So in this weekend, we are not going to discuss in complete details about this Indus Valley civilization. But this class is the general outline of Indus Valley civilization. Actually, what is Indus Valley civilization? Why we Indians take pride, we feel very proud to always look back to this period as so glorious. Why? You might have listened in the political speeches, you might have listened mainly during the election periods, etc., that always our politicians will look back to the glorious past they will say the glorious past of India. We have a Harappan civilization, Indus Valley civilization, the most oldest civilization. So all these will go, these statements we will listen. So let's analyze that what is the actual speciality of this period. Why we Indians will always take proud of this period. So normally to explain this Indus Valley civilization incomplete, it takes time. Let us not rush, because quality is important in learning. I feel so. So in this class we will restrict ourselves to the general outline of Indus Valley civilization. So in this class we will completely know about why Indus Valley civilization actually emerged. What was the reasons for the emergence of this civilization, and what were the main characteristics of this civilization and what actually makes it different from the previous Neolithic period, Chalcolithic period, etc. So let's discuss all these issues in this class. And in complete about the specifics, the static portion of the Indus Valley civilization, we will discuss in the coming weekend. This is the general outline of Indus Valley civilization. This is very important. This is the foundational class to understand that static portion of the Indus Valley civilization. This is the analytical part. So please listen this carefully. Very important. Analysis is important than facts. So please keep it in mind. Now by 2700 BC, if you see on the world stage, there were three important civilizations emerged on the world stage. By 2007, by 3000, we can see our Indus Valley civilization emerged by 2700 BC, but just a little preceding that, a little before that, by 3000 BC, if you see, we have this clarity. First Homo sapien was emerged in which continent? Africa. From there he out-migrated and he came to West Asia. We discussed it. And from there, from West Asia, he migrated to the South Asia and China. South Asia, one branch of Homo sapien came to South Asia from West Asia, and another branch came out to China. After South Asia, the next human being was, he colonized the Southeast Asia. So this was the continental colonization of the human being. So it is very natural to expect the first civilization will actually start where? The starting of the original land of the Homo sapien. So that's the reason the first civilization on the world stage was emerged in Africa, that is Egyptian civilization. Egypt civilization, very important. Sir, along the river Nile, by 3000 BC, we have seen the cities were coming up, a form of cities. Sir, you can just imagine, once the Neolithic period got over, once villages were started maturing, by 3000 BC, not only in India, I am saying in the world stage, on the world stage itself, we are finding that new cities are coming up. So the first civilization to be emerged on the world stage by 3000 BC in Africa is, what is that? Egyptian civilization. Now, this is at 3000 BC. By then, Indus Valley civilization was not emerged, was not mature. even was not started per se. By 2000, let's say 1900, 2900 and 2800, just before the Indus Valley civilization to come, we have seen another civilization in West Asia, because that was the earlier landmass to be colonized before South Asia and China region. So in West Asia, after Egyptian civilization, just as a contemporary to that, another civilization has come up. And what is that? That is Mesopotamia civilization. So please remember, these are very important. Egyptian civilization emerged in Egypt, that is Africa, along the river Nile, and just 100 years or 200 years after that, we found the emergence of the Mesopotamia civilization. What is meant by Mesopotamia? Meso means in between. Remember, very important. Meso means in between. Potamia means rivers. Potamia means two rivers. So actually the region of Iraq, the region of Iran, in this area, Iraq and Iran, we found an emergence of Mesopotamia civilization. So this was emerged in between two rivers. What were the two rivers? One river was to the north, we see Tigris, the river Tigris, and to the south, rivers will act as the boundaries to the civilization normally, or around the rivers only civilizations have emerged. I will tell the reasons after that, we will analyze that. So Mesopotamia civilization was actually emerged between the two rivers. One is Tigris and another one is Euphrates. Very important point. So this was happening around 2800 and 2900 BC. Just 100 years after that, I mean to say actually that all these civilizations are contemporary to each other, but with a little difference of 100 years to the emergence. First Egyptian civilization, after that Mesopotamia civilization has come up. Now by 2700 BC, if you see, the next colonized land after West Asia, what was that? South Asia and China. That's the reason in China and in India, that means in South Asia, India is, please remember, the moment I use India, till 1947, this India represents Indian subcontinent. What is Indian subcontinent? Indian subcontinent is the group of the present 7 countries, that is, those are India, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh and Pakistan, and Maldives. These were the 7 countries: Pakistan, Maldives, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan and India. All these were actually considered as Indian subcontinent. So when I say India, till we reach modern India 1947, till that period India means, please always feel as the landmass of these 7 countries. Okay, so now by 2700 BC, we saw the emergence of 2 civilizations. One is in India, that means in southern Asia, and another civilization was at the same time was emerging in China. That's the reason Chinese civilization and Indian civilization are almost the oldest civilizations which came on the same time. So we both are almost on the same platform, actually, to be on a social and cultural front, to say. So now the conclusion is Egyptian civilization, Mesopotamia civilization in the Iran and Iraq region, Indus Valley civilization in southern Asia, South Asia, and the Chinese civilization in China. All these four civilizations are actually considered as the oldest civilizations of the world. Remember this fact. Now let's come to Indus Valley civilization. So what is this civilization? What is the term actually civilization means? What civilization actually means? What is the distinctive feature from being Neolithic period age to this Indus Valley civilization? Let's see. See, now just a small interruption. Just come forward in timeline and to around 1850s. This is what happening. First of all, how do we come to know that there was a civilization called Indus Valley Civilization? How could we come to know that? Let's analyze it. Sir, in the 1850s, if you see, the Britishers actually started by 1853. They started laying railway lines in our India. That is British India. Before that, there were railway lines in Europe, but in British India, as Britishers were ruling our India, the British India, they actually did not lay railway lines. In Europe they were, but in India they were not introduced at all. But by 1850, if you see, this industrial revolution was too matured in the Europe in such a way that all the factories of the Europe, especially the Britain, they were in dire need of raw material. By 1850s, all the factories, all the industries of the Europe are in huge need of the raw material. What is the raw material? For example, if you see textile industries, they were in huge need of what? Cotton. And if you see, railway industry. The moment railway transportation has increased in the Europe, first of all, the earlier form of railway tracks were laid by what? Wooden, bamboo and timber, especially not bamboo but timber. So for the railway line construction, timber was actually very much in demand in Europe. That means you can understand development work was started by 1850 in Europe because of the developmental works. They were in huge need of raw materials, and that made the Britishers in India to start laying down the railway lines to connect these raw material places to the cities, so that from these Indian cities they can transport it to the Europe. That's the idea of actually Britishers. So what they did, by 1853, the first railway line was made between Mumbai and Thane. This was the first line which was made. Why Britishers were laying railway lines in India? See, they will say that for developmental purpose, but the actual reason, the behind it reason was to connect the raw material regions to the cities, so that a bulk amount of this cotton, a bulk quantity of this timber from deep forest, they can be transported to the Indian cities. From there they will be transported to Indian ports, and from ports in large ships they will be transported back to Europe. This was the idea of the Britishers. So from 1853 they started laying down the railway lines. First only it started in Bombay province. But by 5 years after that, if you see, by 1857, this was extended, and for the first time railway lines were started laying in every province of British India. So as a part of that, in 1857, the present day Punjab and the Pakistan's Punjab, we have Punjab in our India, just east to westernwards to that, in Pakistan also they have a Punjab province. Actually they were once one Punjab. So in that Punjab, engineers went there and they started surveying the area for laying down the railway lines, and even they started the excavation work. Why excavation? To excavate the soil and to fill the bed, the cushion, to lay the cushion for the railway lines. So these engineers went to the Punjab region, that is in the Pakistan's present Punjab region, and they were working. They were started laying down the railway lines. As a part of that, they are excavating the soil. So in the 1857, when these engineers were excavating, suddenly they were shocked by seeing some objects in the soil. The workers informed to the engineers that, sir, there was a huge amount of bricks. They were getting, when they excavated the soil for the laying down of railway lines, these engineers were surprised to see that there are a large number of bricks present in the soil. They excavated, so they took out one brick. It was very strong. It was very strong brick. Not only strong, it was very standardized brick and very high quality brick. They were very happy. These British engineers, were very happy to see that bricks, and they still excavated the soil. And the moment they still excavated, they are still getting the bricks. A large number of bricks they are getting. So they were too happy. They were too happy to get them, because for railway lines, for laying of railway lines, bricks were actually very, very useful to construct the railway lines. So, these engineers were too happy to found this mound of the bricks inside the soil. So they were keep on excavating them, and they were keep on carrying off these bricks and laying down the tracks around, to say a factual number, around some 30 to 40 kilometers of railway line was made only from this excavated soil where the bricks were found. See, the point here is that these engineers, these British engineers, were not thinking about the origin of this brick. They were too greedy that they were just carrying off them and just using them in the railway line. But they never thought that, to which period these bricks belongs to, or actually why bricks mounds were there at this particular site. They never thought of this. They only keep on digging them, and they keep on excavating them, they keep on carrying off them and laying down the railway lines. So this went for around 80 years. Some around 50 to 60,000 bricks were carried off from that particular excavated site, and they laid a lot of, a very lengthy railway lines in that particular region. Engineers were very happy, and they got free material, very, ready-made bricks they got from soil itself. They were very happy, but those dumb engineers never thought that what is the reason for, that mound of bricks to be placed there. After 80 years from that incident, sir, please imagine, after 80 years, that is by around 1910 and 20s, the discipline of archaeology has developed in British India. Archaeology has developed. And these works of looking back into the past of India has started, because national movement was started. Nationalists were actually glorifying the Indian past, and in a counter to that, the British engineers were also started writing their own version of Indian history. So when these ideological debates are going on, in that science, they implemented science, and they wrote their British version of Indian histories. And to counter them, nationalist leaders were started writing their own version of Indian histories. So in this scenario, if you see, the department of archaeology has become too relevant. Archaeology. So by 1910, this archaeology department came to know about that incident which has been happening since 80 years. Like some engineers in the Punjab, they found some mound of bricks in the soil, and they have been carrying off these bricks and laying down the railway lines. So when this information got to know by whom, the archaeological department, they went there just casually. They want to know actually what is this incident and what they were actually carrying off from the site, the engineers. So these archaeologists went to the Punjab, and they saw that particular site from where excavations were happened, and they were surprised. So very important to understand, these archaeologists have, they took the bricks and they tested them. They, maybe by carbon dating method or some other methods, they dated back these bricks, and they were very surprised that particular site from which these bricks were, these engineers were digging out the bricks, actually that particular site was the earliest city ever found on this complete Indian subcontinent. The earliest city of Indian subcontinent. That's what the archaeologists found. Now engineers stopped digging out that, because now they came to know that particular site has some historical importance. Archaeological department took over that site in the Punjab region of Pakistan, and they completely excavated the site without affecting the structure. They completely excavated the site. Sir, you don't even believe that was the earliest well made, well structured, well planned city they found once they dig complete soil. They were very shocked by seeing that. Actually, these engineers, as I have said, they were excavating the bricks, they were carrying off the bricks from mound of bricks. Actually, those were the walls of the buildings of that particular city. Because these engineers did not know that, they were carrying off the bricks, but they were actually part of the walls of the city's buildings. So archaeologists were very surprised, and they preserved it. They completely stopped the movement of people to that particular site. And that place is very important. Now this is the introduction of the Indus Valley civilization. The first site which archaeologists have discovered was discovered in that Punjab's province of Pakistan was Harappa. So that site was actually, the name of that site where they found this city was Harappa. So because the first city to be discovered in the Indus Valley civilization cities was Harappa, the complete civilization was named as Harappan civilization. So Harappan civilization is nothing but another name of Indus Valley civilization. Now you got the point. Why Harappan civilization? Because the first city to be discovered out of all the cities of Indus Valley civilization was Harappa. Now, it induced a lot of curiosity in the archaeologists, and they started digging, they started excavating the nearby sites to this Harappa city. Sir, you don't imagine that there were around 8 to 9 cities they found along the river Indus. They started excavation work around the river Indus. The first city they found accidentally was Harappa. After that, they voluntarily started digging excavation work, and they found around 8 to 9 cities. And you don't believe, Harappa is actually a smaller city, but they found a very largest city of the complete civilization around just to the left of the Indus River. That was Mohenjo-daro city. Mohenjo-daro, now you understand, Mohenjo-daro is actually the largest city of this group of cluster of cities of Indus Valley civilization. So what is this Indus Valley civilization? It is nothing but a period in the history of India where actually the earliest cities were emerged. After Neolithic and Chalcolithic period, the first earliest cities were emerged. So the first city we discovered was Harappa. So we call it as Harappan civilization. After that, 8 to 9 cities around the river Indus we found. What were they? Sir, if you see, in Pakistan, we found Harappa city, one city of out of 8 to 9 cities of Indus Valley period. Mohenjo-daro was the largest city we found. This was another city just near to Harappa. Then we also found a city in our Punjab province, in our Haryana province, the Indian Punjab and Haryana province, and in the Rajasthan and Gujarat provinces also. The cities like Kalibangan, the cities like Lothal, the city like Dholavira in Gujarat, Lothal in Gujarat, Kalibangan in Rajasthan. So these were some of the cities of Indus Valley civilization. What are the cities? Harappa is one city, Mohenjo-daro is one city we found of this period, and Kalibangan we found is one of the city in Rajasthan we found, and we also found Lothal, one of the city, Dholavira, one of the city. Like that, we found around 8 to 9 cities once these archaeologists excavated around the area of the Indus Valley, Indus River. And they were too surprised to know another important observation. That is, they observed first what was the first site they discovered, Harappa. So they have seen the type of buildings, the type of settlement, what are the conditions of the settlement, everything they studied, and they were too surprised to see that the same design, the same planning, the same structures were found in almost all the cities. That means all cities are similar to each other. All cities are similar. That is the reason for all these 8 to 9 cities which were around the river Indus in the northwest portion of our Indian subcontinent, that is from India's Punjab and Haryana, Rajasthan, Gujarat and Punjab of Pakistan, Sindh of Pakistan and Balochistan of Pakistan. This was the northwest region of the Indian subcontinent. In that area, these 8 to 9 cities, almost all were similar in their establishments. So these archaeologists thought, they even pondered along with the historians and scientists, the historians have said this was actually a flourished period of Indian prehistory. That was the peak of the Indian prehistory. Peak period of Indian prehistory that we found earliest cities. So we call this as the first urbanization of India. It's a very important point. This period of 8 to 9 cities we found. So that period, all are contemporary cities to each other, are similar to each other, are almost like same. So we call that particular period as civilization, the oldest civilization of India, the first urbanization of India, the first earliest cities come up in that period. That's why this period is very important to our Indian prehistory. We always look back because it was cities, sir. Cities. Even today our India is rural India. 60 to 70% of the people live in rural villages. But then if you see, they all are mostly predominated by what? Cities. The village settlements we found were very less, but the cities are very large. Mohenjo-daro was one of the mightiest city of our Indus Valley civilization out of all these 8 to 9 cities. This is the importance of Indus Valley civilization. So what were the sites we found? Harappa was the first site. So the complete civilization also named as Harappan civilization. Mohenjo-daro is another site. Kalibangan is another site in Rajasthan. Lothal is another site in Gujarat. Dholavira is another site in Gujarat. So like that we found around 8 to 9 sites. We will discuss in detail about all these sites and in which city what we found. In specifically we will discuss in our next weekend. But as this is general outline of Indus Valley civilization, I am restricting myself to just naming of the cities. Now, the next portion of our lecture. We found the cities. It's okay. So archaeologists now started, they were very surprised and they started digging out. They started studying this structure, this city, the complete structure of the city, the planning of the city, etc. Whether it is planned or unplanned, what are the materials with which the buildings were made up of, etc. They were studying scientifically. And they found some very peculiar characteristics of these cities. So let us study what is the peculiar characteristics of these Indus Valley cities. So the first, what are the specialities of these Indus Valley cities? This is what we are going to study. In almost all the cities, if you see, in Harappa, in Mohenjo-daro, Lothal, Dholavira, Kalibangan, in almost all the cities, we observed a common pattern that actually, the first point, I am going to tell you the first speciality of these cities. City was divided into two different portions. Two or more sometimes, but in almost many of the cities of this, almost every city, but there will exist some exceptions. Mostly, if you see, out of all the cities, many cities were actually divided into two or more portions. So what we can understand by that? You can understand that if a city was divided into two or more portions, that means there might be having some social status differences. Maybe that might be the reason for this separation, or there might be started some social identities, so that one particular social identified people living in one particular area, or maybe this authority power differences might have come up by that period. So maybe that might be the reason why this city was divided into two or three portions. So this was the one important point to be explored. So the first speciality of the cities was every city was almost divided into 2 or 3 portions. Now, second point. Sir, if you see, let us consider city was divided into 2 portions. One is westward portion, another one is east side portion. In most of the cities, we found a common pattern. The west side portion of the city is actually very small in area, but the larger majority portion of the area was actually to the east side of the city. In almost every city, we found the same pattern. And this small westward portion of the city is actually somewhat higher in height than the lower portion of the eastward largest portion of the city. Are you understanding? City was divided into 2 portions. Small portion which was higher in altitude was to the west, and large portion which was lower in its altitude was to the right, that is to the east of the city. This pattern we found in almost, just like it's like a stage, it's like a ground. Just like that we found in almost every city, 2 portions we found in every city. Now, archaeologists are studying this, right? So archaeologists called this smaller westward higher portion as citadel. So very important term, CITEDAL. CITADAL, I'm sorry, citadel. What is the citadel? Citadel is the westward small higher portion of the city, that is called as citadel, and the lower eastward portion of the city is called as lower town. Who are naming these? Archaeologists and historians. So every city was divided into 2 portions. One portion was called as citadel, which was higher and smaller. Another portion was lower and larger, called as lower town. This was we observed in almost 8 to 9 cities, almost all the cities of Indus Valley civilization. Now, another speciality, if you see, these archaeologists found that almost on every smaller portion, the smaller portion is there, right? That is citadel. So in the citadel portion of every city, they found some special structures, the special buildings. By this we can understand one thing, that maybe common people were residing in the larger and lower area, and maybe some important people might have lived around this area, might be. These are just explorations. Now, if you see the special buildings of this citadel, the westward portion of the cities, mainly if you see very important special buildings, for example, in Mohenjo-daro site, in Mohenjo-daro city, one of the city of Indus Valley civilization, on the citadel portion of the city we found a great bath. We discussed that special buildings were there on the citadel portion. So in the smaller westward portion of the city called as citadel, in the Mohenjo-daro city we found a great bath, which is a special structure. Great bath. What is this great bath? Sir, you have to understand that this actually great bath is, this portion is higher portion than this lower town. But on this this smaller but higher portion of citadel, we found an artificial tank. Artificial tank we found, just like a swimming pool, like that. We found a artificial tank, and you don't just believe. If I say about great bath, just listen. Sir, this great bath which was on the citadel portion of the Mohenjo-daro was lined with bricks, lined with high quality standardized bricks. It was completely lined. This tank, swimming pool like structure was in Mohenjo-daro. It was completely lined, and not only lined with bricks. On the brick lining, we found a coating of plaster. They have coated with plaster. That great bath was lined with the bricks. After that, it has been coated with plaster. And not only with that, even this great bath which was on the citadel portion of the Mohenjo-daro city, was made watertight. Sir, how great techniques they were using. The complete artificial tank called Great Bath was lined with the bricks, it was coated with the plaster, and it was made watertight by using natural tar. They were using natural tar for watertighting that artificial tank. You can imagine the constructive skills they have. Great brick lining, coating with plaster. After that, a layer of natural tar to make that artificial tank watertight. So by seeing all this, even, sir, you don't imagine that, you don't believe, you just imagine that this Great Bath, to its northern side and southern side, it has steps to which was leading into it. Just like, in almost bigger temples you will see, a tank will exist and some steps will lead into the tank for taking, holy bath. Just like that, in the citadel portion of the Mohenjo-daro, this Great Bath, in that Great Bath, we found two-sided steps were there, which was leading into the Great Bath. Steps were also there. Now, upon seeing all this, archaeologists and historians believed this Great Bath might be used by very important people of that Indus Valley period, right? Of that Mohenjo-daro city. Not the common people, but important people might be using it. That's why it was watertight, it was coated, it was laid with steps leading into it. And you don't believe, around the Great Bath, there were rooms. There were small closed rooms were there. Maybe, just after taking a spiritual bath or holy bath, they might be, changing their dress or, just for resting purpose. For all this, there are rooms surroundings on all sides. There were rooms surrounding this Great Bath. What a great technology. So this was the one special structure we found on the citadel portion of the city. And if you see some cities like, Kalibangan and Lothal, this was I said in Mohenjo-daro we found Great Bath. But in some cities like Kalibangan and Lothal, we found on the citadel portion of the city, that is the small and the western portion, higher portion of the city, Kalibangan and Lothal, in these two cities we found fire altars. Fire altars, that means, you might have seen homum, a very large homum. Just like that structures, fire altars, we found on the citadel portion. That means there might be, happening some sacrifices. Maybe sacred sacrifices they were giving to the, maybe some spirits they believe in. Sacrifices, to do sacrifices, there was a fire altars we found on the citadel portion, special structure. Now, sir, if you see some cities like, Mohenjo-daro again, Mohenjo-daro, Lothal, Dholavira, if you see in these cities, we found that on the citadel portion of the cities, there are some storehouses. A large storehouses were there. That means we can understand that maybe by this Indus Valley period, from 2700 to 1900 period, agriculture was much flourished. To store the grains, there were storehouses constructed on the citadel portion of the city. Agriculture might have, flourished. These are the special things, special structures that, archaeologists have found. They are surprised to see all this. Now, this is about the, speciality of the city, the citadel portion, dividing into two portions, citadel and lower town. On the citadel, there are some special structures. These we found in almost all the cities of the Indus Valley civilization. Now, let us know about how houses were built and how the infrastructure like drainage system and how some other streets were laid. Let's see. Sir, you don't imagine that in every city of the Indus Valley civilization, like Harappa city, Mohenjo-daro city, Lothal city, Kalibangan city, Dholavira city, in almost every city, we found that either houses are actually square shaped or rectangular shaped, or they are most of the times they are multi-storied buildings. Very less often they are one-story buildings, but more often they are multi-storied buildings. Sir, you can imagine even today most of the people of most of the Indians are living under thatched roof. But the Indus Valley civilization people were having the houses which were rectangular and square in shape. Not only one story building but double storied buildings were also we found. Double story buildings, multi-story buildings. You can imagine the architectural intelligence of those people. Now, sir, not only multi-storied building, if you see most of the houses we found a common pattern. That is, you might have seen in movies like after 2000 most of the movies are storied on middle class people, right? In those you will see some houses like this. In the center they will have courtyard, and surrounding the courtyard all rooms will open into that courtyard. So first open space will be there in the center of the house, roofless, topless, even rain will come, some light will come. That was the central portion, courtyard we call it as. And surrounding the courtyard there are lot many rooms which directly open into the courtyard. You see it in movies like if you see the movies, one Mahesh Babu movie was there, I forgot the name, Atadu movie. You can see in the Atadu you find that, and also in the Maanaya movie you find that. So most of the middle class storyline movies, it was like that. So that Indus Valley civilization cities were having the houses which actually patterned around the courtyard, rooms were constructed. That was the typical nature of the house. So normally in every center of the house we will have a courtyard, open space, and surrounding rooms will be there. This is the another important point of these houses. Now, sir, you don't believe if I say another statement that almost in every house of every city of Indus Valley civilization we found a special bathing room. Bathrooms, sir, special toilets were there, special bathing rooms were there in every home of every city. Even today we are not having that. We are struggling to reach 100% open defecation free villages and cities. But in Indus Valley civilization, every house was having a bathing area, special room. Sir, in every house we found in these cities a well for the supply of water. Every house was having a tube well, a digged well to supply of water. This was too shocked to see this very well planned structures of this Indus Valley civilization. So not only this, if you see the drainage system of this Indus Valley civilization, sir, it was very, very, very intellectually made. You just imagine, even if you are a civil engineer, you must have to listen the next 5 to 10 minutes lecture very focusedly. Sir, the drainage system of Indus Valley civilization cities, if you see, first if you see complete city from a top view, all the streets, along the streets, this drainage line will be there, and all streets were laid in a grid pattern. All the streets were made in a grid pattern, and the drainage system was straight line drainage system. Along the streets, on the sides of the streets, we found the drainage which was straight line rectangular drainage structures on the streets. And now from every house, from bathroom, in every house we have seen a connection to the waste water from bathing room was going actually into a sink pit. There was a pit they dig, so that the waste water first will go and settle there, so that the solid waste which was there inside the water, that will settle down in that pit. And from there, from that pit, that sink pit, a drain was laid, attached from house towards the street drain. See how intellectually they made the drainage system. From that sink pit, another drain was attached to the street's drain, so that the street drain will take the wastewater, and from that street drain will join to another ward lane, so that it takes the wastewater out of the city. How intellectually it made. Sir, you don't believe if I say that all the drainage on the streets, if you see, it was covered. Even till today we see that in most of the municipalities drainage was actually not covered from top. But Indus Valley civilization cities were having the street drainage completely covered. And not only covering, sir, you imagine, because it was covered, frequently some sediment particles, they have to be cleared off. So we found that inspection holes at regular intervals of the drains. We found inspection holes, the manholes we say in our terms. Inspection holes were there to clean the drains. Sir, you don't believe another point too if I say that these Indus Valley civilization drainage system, do you know how water was actually flowing? Today we were pumping the wastewater, even the wastewater we were pumping. But they intelligently, if we observe the drainage system of every city, we found a gentle slope at the bottom of the drainage. A gentle slope was there, so that the wastewater will naturally, under gravity, it will flow out of the city. How beautifully it made. Under gravity, the gentle slope, a slow slope was made. Very, very, very intellectual people. Indus Valley civilization. Sir, now drainage system. So if you see the houses which were square and rectangular and multi-storied buildings, not only that, even we found courtyard, around that rooms were there. Drainage system was grid in pattern, streets were grid in pattern. Small drains were attaching to bigger ones, and those take the wastewater to the outside of the city. And we have seen gentler slope. Brick lining was there. The top covering was there to this drainage. Brick lining was there. Brick lining at the bottom. This was the architectural intellectuality of these Indus Valley civilization people. Now, so not only this, they have studied the houses, they found drainage system, they found everything. So it actually looked like a planned city. Are you not convinced that all these actually, the square shaped, rectangular shaped, straight drainage system, grid pattern, everything, is it not looking like a planned city? That's what the historians and even archaeologists believe, that actually Indus Valley civilization cities were planned cities, and they were constructed at a time. At a time, house and drainage system, everything were constructed, planned, and at a time they constructed. Very interesting. And not only that, inside the homes we found certain structures, certain objects, very unique objects which actually characterizes this Indus Valley civilization. Let's imagine what archaeologists found. Sir, archaeologists found for the first time stone weights. Squarish and rectangular stone weights. Normally, stone weights. Why we use weights? For example, in balance, normally to weigh some half kg of material or half kg of grains, we will have in balance a small stone, half kg of stone. Those are called as the stone weights. So we found in the Indus Valley civilization period for the first time a very regularly shaped stone weights we found. Those were the stone weights were made by a stone, special stone, whitish in color, very, it was glowing. Very, very accurate stone weights we found. Stone weight was one of the unique object we found. And another thing was, first time we found seals. Seals, what is meant by seal? Sir, seal means a small stone will be there. On that stone, some motif of maybe an animal or maybe a plant or maybe a script, some motif was carved on this stone. That was the seal. It was used as a maybe authentication or maybe just like an officer's authentication, so that once a person see that seal, he will come to know what from where it came. Maybe, for example, to deliver certain goods in trade, maybe the recipient will come to know, okay, this was actually of particular owner. So seals were there for the first time we found. And very interestingly, sir, very important point, on the seals we found a motif of an animal, one bull, it's like one horned bull, like just like that it looks. An animal motif was there on the seal. And on the top of the seal we found a script. A script we found, sir. For the first time we have seen in the prehistory of India, a script, a written script was used. And very interestingly to know, till today it was not deciphered. Our scientists and archaeologists were unable to decode the information what actually has been written. We deciphered lot many scripts, but Indus Valley Civilization script was the old and ancient script we found, first ever script we found on this land, Indian land mass, but we could not able to decipher it, what they were actually telling. Script was there, sir. Important, a small point to be understood here. What is meant by civilization? Why we call this period as actually civilized period? Indus Valley, it's okay, along the Indus, but the term civilization, why? It is because the moment human beings started using language, speech, language and script and writing, accounting the records, that art of reading and writing actually makes a person civilized. That's the reason, as we first time for the first time found the script, we call this period as the civilized period of our Indian prehistory. So this is Indus Valley civilization. Understood? So where there is writing and reading and written material we found, that actually indication of a civilized society. Seals we found. Now, sir, you will shock if I say that they were actually very fond of ornaments. Not only you and me, even the Indus Valley people were so fond of ornaments. We found the ornaments which were made out of copper, because copper was the first metal. We found the ornaments which were made of bronze, because it was Bronze Age. After Chalcolithic, Indus Valley civilization started. That means Bronze Age period. Copper and tin will combine to form an alloy, that is bronze. So this is Bronze Age period. We found copper, at the same time bronze tools, bronze ornaments they found. And you don't believe even if I say that they were using beads in their necks. If you see the ornaments, they were using beads, stone beads. Very beautiful precious stones were actually shaped into beads, and they were using them as ornaments. We found the evidence of that. Stone beads. And not only that, they were using very sharp stone blades, maybe for cutting the meat or some other purpose. Stone blades they were using. That means the unique culture, there was a unique culture which was characterized as Indus Valley civilization. What were they? Stone beads we found, stone shells we found, stone blades we found, ornaments we found, tools of copper, tools of bronze we found, stone weights we found. These were the unique objects of Indus Valley civilization we found. Now, sir, as we are discussing that, we were keep on telling that these are cities, right? Actually, what makes a city different from village? Very important point, sir. Where there is a food production happens directly at that particular place, we call it as primary sites, primary settlements or villages. Food production, direct food production will happen. But cities were actually secondary in position. That means where the food raw material was processed is called as the city. That means for the raw material which were produced in the villages, in the countryside, to be processed in the cities, actually there must be some specialists. For example, let's say, a farmer was on the countryside cultivating grain, and that grain has to become, that grain has to be processed as food. I mean, crushing, thrashing, all this process have to crushing, all grinding, this have to be done. So there will be a person who crushes, there will be a person who grinds, there will be a person who thrash. So these are specialists, and these specialists will live in the cities. That's the most important characteristics of a city. And second characteristic is that in a city we find craft persons who are not engaged in the agriculture but in craft making, in these tertiary activities like ornaments making, craft making, processing of the food, cloth making. So you might be understanding that craft persons will also be in need of food. So from where the food, these craft people get food? From villages. That means there must be trade happening between villages and cities. This processed food, this processed cloth, this processed beads, ornaments, tools which were required in the agriculture, etc. were being made in the cities, and they were exchanged for the food grains. Who should do that? Traders will do that. So trade was another important characteristic of a city. That's why we call these Indus Valley cities as cities, earliest cities. We found the trade, sir, you don't imagine, you don't believe that we found lot many metals, lot many precious stones which were not locally available at the sites of Indus Valley cities. For example, tin, we don't find tin in complete northwestern region, but tin was abundant in Afghanistan. That means this tin might have been brought from Afghanistan by some people, maybe traders. So like that, even we found certain seals of Harappan civilization in Mesopotamia civilization in cities. In Mesopotamia, Iran and Iraq places, we found the seals of Harappan civilization. That means there must have been a very well flourishing trade. So trade was very important characteristics of a city. That's why we say these are Indus Valley cities. Now, these Indus Valley village communities who are residing just beside these to feed the needs of these cities, there must be some villages around every city. Mohenjo-daro, they will have some cities. Around the Harappa, they will have some cities like that. So these village communities actually were producing the food grain and supplying to the city for the food, and in return they are getting what? They are getting cloth. In return they are getting beads. In return they are getting tools, copper vessels, bronze tools, bronze vessels, stone blades, stone weights, everything. So this period was considered as the most glorious period of our prehistorical India, Indus Valley period. So in conclusion, to say this is what the Indus Valley civilization, this is what happened between 2700 BC to around 1900 BC. This is a general outline of Indus Valley civilization. Now you might have sensed some that crux of this Indus Valley civilization, right? From 2700 to 1900 BC, this was happening. But we don't know what happened at 1900 or 1800. Let's say after 1500 BC, we don't know what happened. See, not 1500, after 2000 BC till 1900 BC. At the end of the Indus Valley civilization, we don't know what happened, but these cities were, disappeared. Why did they disappear? Why did actually first they emerge? And at the matured peak stage of the Indus Valley civilization, that is around 2500 BC, that is the peak stage of Indus Valley civilization, we found these matured cities. How actually they emerged as very matured cities? We have to see, we have to study and analyze. So this lecture today we discussed about a general overview of what actually Indus Valley civilization is and what were the cities and what we were finding there. Till today in this lecture we did not go in detail of every site. But in the coming weekend, we will go in detail about every city. At Harappa, what we have found, at Mohenjo-daro, what we found, at Kalibangan, at Lothal, at Dholavira, and like that. And what is the linkage between Indus Valley people and Chinese civilization people? What was the relationship between West Asian Oman people, the Mesopotamia civilization people, and even, let's say, if any relationship between Egyptian people. So all these we will study in our next weekend in detail about this Indus Valley civilization. Very specifically, especially examination oriented. For example, factual oriented analysis we will do in the next weekend. So this lecture is actually an outline of Indus Valley civilization to get a knack of what actually this civilization was. Why we have to study it so thoroughly. This is the reason we have to study. Lot many specialities we found. Lot first time cities, earlier cities, first time, lot many different tools, ornamental values, etc. we found. Stone beads, stone blades, copper tools, bronze tools, etc. we found. So this is what the glorious period of our Indian prehistory, Indus Valley civilization. That's the reason our politicians always look back and glorify to counter the British people, to counter the some foreign rulers who came and colonized India, imperialistic people. Our nationalists always look back to this glorious period, and they said, when Britishers said that Indians were actually rude, Indians were savage people, Indians were barbaric in nature, they don't know how to self-rule. When national movement was going on, our nationalists looked back to this glorious period of Indus Valley civilization, and this countered the black propaganda of British people, and they said that we were the earliest civilizational people, we were the earliest, our Indian subcontinent harnessed the earliest cities of the world. Earliest cities. This is what the positive side of counter arguments of our nationalist people, nationalist leaders. So this is, we will see in the modern India especially what was actually going on. So this is what the Indus Valley civilization period from 2700 to around 1900 BC. So in the next weekend we will discuss in detail about every site. There are 8 to 9 cities. So in every city what we found, what we actually found, and how was the people living there, what was the lifestyle of the people there, and what were the trade relationships, if there are any religious beliefs, if there are any spiritual beliefs, evil beliefs. So all these social domain, political domain, etc. we will discuss in detail in the next coming weekend. That is Indus Valley Civilization Part 2. So till then, please in the description and the comment box I will place the class notes for this lecture. Please go through that, and if you have any queries about this Indus Valley Civilization outline in this lecture, please do comment so that I can try to give you an explanation. And till then, see you all. Thank you.